I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told my husband the truth as a joke, about one night with his best friend. That was supposed to be funny, not life-changing, but now I'm sitting here with divorce papers on my kitchen table. I never thought he'd actually believe it, or that everyone else would take his side. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. Let me start from the beginning, because everyone's painting me as some kind of villain when all I did was try to lighten the mood during what had been an incredibly tense week in our house. The evening air in our suburban home felt suffocating that Tuesday night. Matt had been distant for days, buried in his laptop, barely acknowledging me or our 7-year-old daughter Ivy. His mother Linda was visiting, which always made me feel like I was being judged for every little thing I did. The whole atmosphere was just heavy. I'm Zafira Vane, 32 years old, and I work as an office administrator downtown. I've always been good at reading rooms, knowing how to break tension with the right comment or joke. Matt used to love that about me, how I could make him laugh when he was stressed about work or family drama. But lately, nothing I said seemed to reach him. Maybe I should trade you in for someone more exciting, I said playfully during dinner, nudging Matt's shoulder while Ivy picked at her mac and cheese. Linda's fork paused halfway to her mouth, and she gave me one of those cold looks that said she didn't find my humor appropriate. Matt just shrugged. If that's what you want, Zeph. That stung more than I expected. Usually he'd play along, maybe joke back about trading me in for someone who didn't leave dishes in the sink. But this flat, indifferent response, it felt like he was dismissing me entirely. Later that evening, after Ivy was in bed and Linda had retreated to the guest room, Matt's phone buzzed with a text. I glanced over and saw Carter's name on the screen. Carter Ellison, Matt's best friend since college, and one of the most charming guys I'd ever met. 34, works in sales, and has this easy confidence that Matt sometimes lacks. Carter's texting pretty late, I commented, trying to sound casual. Matt looked at me strangely. It's 8:30, Zeph. That's not late. I just meant, never mind. I felt foolish, but something about Matt's expression made me defensive. You're being paranoid about everything lately. Am I? Matt's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it I didn't recognize. The next day, I called my mother Ruth while driving to work. At 58, she's always been my biggest supporter, the one person who consistently takes my side when Matt and I have our disagreements. He's just being dramatic, she said when I explained Matt's weird mood. Men go through phases. Your father did the same thing when he felt like work was overwhelming him. Matt probably just needs space. That made sense. Matt's job in IT management had been particularly stressful lately, with budget cuts and staff changes. Maybe I was reading too much into his distance. At dinner that night, I decided to try a different approach. You know what? Carter's always more fun at parties anyway, I said, laughing as I served Matt his plate. Remember that barbecue last month? He had everyone cracking up with those stories about his college roommate. Matt's expression darkened in a way that made my stomach clench. Carter's fun, is he? I just meant he's good at entertaining people. You know that. I was backpedaling now, sensing I'd stepped into some kind of minefield without understanding how. Right. Matt nodded slowly, then excused himself from the table. Later that night, I found him in his home office, quietly scrolling through what looked like phone records on his computer screen. When he saw me in the doorway, he closed the laptop without saying a word. What are you looking at? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Just work stuff. But his eyes didn't meet mine, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The next morning at work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting at home, and I needed to talk to someone who would understand. Carter worked as a sales rep for a company just a few blocks from my office, and we'd developed a comfortable friendship over the years. He was easy to talk to, always ready with a sympathetic ear when Matt was being difficult. I texted him around 10. Coffee break. Need to vent about Matt's latest mood. He responded quickly, sure, but maybe we should keep it low-key. Things feel weird right now. That was strange. Carter was usually up for anything, never one to worry about appearances. But when we met at the little cafe between our offices, he seemed nervous, checking his phone constantly and glancing around like he expected someone to be watching us. Matt's been acting so cold lately, I told him, stirring sugar into my latte. I can't figure out what his problem is. Last night he was going through phone records or something, like he's suddenly suspicious of everyone. Carter shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Maybe you should just give him some space for a while. Let things cool down. That's what my mom said too, but it's frustrating, you know. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own house. I reached across the table and touched his arm. At least I can still talk to you. You actually listen. He pulled his arm back gently. Zeph, maybe we shouldn't. I mean, if Matt's already feeling weird about things. Oh, come on. You're his best friend. There's nothing wrong with us talking. I laughed, but even to my own ears it sounded forced. Besides, it's not like we're doing anything wrong. We're just friends. Back at the office, I felt better having talked things through. I sent Matt a text. Carter's helping me with a work project this afternoon. Might be home a little late. It wasn't entirely true. Carter and I were planning to grab drinks after work to continue our conversation. But it wasn't entirely false either. We were working through my problems, which felt like a kind of project. My phone buzzed with a response from Matt. Okay. Just, okay, not thanks for letting me know, or see you later, or any of the little affectionate sign-offs he used to include. Just acknowledgement, like I was a coworker giving him a status update. Around 3, my brother Owen texted, "Everything okay at home?" Julia mentioned Matt seemed stressed when she saw him yesterday. Julia was Matt's sister, 29, and never one to keep her opinions to herself. If she was talking to Owen about Matt's mood, that meant the family network was starting to pay attention to whatever was happening between us. Everything's fine, I texted back. Just work stress. But as I hit send, I wondered if that was really true. Matt's behavior felt like more than work stress. It felt personal, directed at me specifically. And the way Carter had acted at coffee, nervous and jumpy, made me wonder if there was something I was missing. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Dinner tomorrow, Matt. The message attached said, I made reservations at Bistro 42 for 4 people. You, me, Carter, and his girlfriend Sarah. Thought it would be nice to all get together. 7 p.m. I stared at the message, trying to decode it. Matt rarely organized social dinners, and he'd never specifically included Carter's girlfriend before. It felt like some kind of test, though I couldn't figure out what he was testing for. I forwarded the invitation to Carter. Looks like we're having a double date tomorrow night. Should be fun. His response took 20 minutes. I don't think Sarah can make it. Maybe we should reschedule. Come on, it'll be fine. Matt's probably just trying to be social. You know how he gets when work is stressing him out. He overcompensates by planning activities. I really think we should skip this one, Zeph. But I was already annoyed by Matt's presumptuous way of planning without consulting me first, and Carter's reluctance felt like he was siding with Matt over me. I called him directly. What's the big deal? I asked when he picked up. It's just dinner with friends. I know, but things feel complicated right now. Maybe it's better if I keep some distance until whatever's bothering Matt blows over. You're his best friend, Carter. If you start avoiding him, that's just going to make him more paranoid. I was pacing around my office now, frustrated by everyone's strange behavior. Besides, we haven't done anything wrong. We're allowed to be friends. There was a long pause. You're right. Okay, I'll be there. After I hung up, I felt vindicated. Everyone was being overly dramatic about nothing. Matt was stressed, Carter was feeding off that energy, and I was getting caught in the middle of their weird dynamic. Tomorrow's dinner would prove that there was nothing to worry about, but as I packed up my desk to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important, some crucial piece of information that would make everyone's behavior make sense. Bistro 42 was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and Edison bulb lighting that made everyone look slightly more attractive than they actually were. Matt had chosen a corner table, which struck me as odd. He usually preferred sitting in the middle of restaurants where he could people watch. This felt more private, more contained. Carter arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing profusely and explaining that Sarah really couldn't make it. Something about a work emergency. He looked pale and kept checking his phone, which was unusual for someone who prided himself on being present and charismatic in social situations. "No problem," Matt said, his voice perfectly polite and perfectly cold. "More intimate this way." I laughed, trying to break the tension. "Intimate? It's just dinner, not a séance." Neither of them smiled. The conversation started normally enough, work updates, weekend plans, mutual friends, but I could feel undercurrents I didn't understand, like there was a whole other conversation happening in glances and pauses that I wasn't privy to. "Remember that party at the Hendersons last month?" I said, trying to steer toward lighter territory. "Carter, you were so funny with those impressions of your old boss. Even Matt was cracking up." "I don't really remember," Carter mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "Of course you remember. You had everyone in stitches. You're so much better at that stuff than Matt. No offense, honey, but you know you're not the entertainer in the family." Matt's fork paused halfway to his mouth. No offense taken. Carter's definitely the entertaining one. Something about his tone made me defensive. "I just meant he's good at working a room. It's a skill, you know. Some people are naturally better at it." "Absolutely," Matt agreed. "Carter's very good at connecting with people." I felt like I was walking through a conversation minefield, but I couldn't figure out where the mines were buried. Every comment seemed to land wrong, creating more tension instead of less. "Well, I think we're all good at different things," I said, reaching for my wine glass. "Like Carter's probably better at keeping secrets than you are, Matt. You've never been able to surprise me with anything because you always give it away with your facial expressions." Carter went completely still. Matt smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Secrets?" Matt asked conversationally. "What kind of secrets would Carter be keeping?" "Oh, just general stuff. Wild nights in college, embarrassing stories, that kind of thing." I was laughing, but it sounded strained even to me. "Everyone has secrets." "Do they?" Matt's voice was still perfectly pleasant, but something about it made my skin crawl. The rest of the dinner passed in stilted conversation and long silences. When the check came, Matt insisted on paying, despite Carter's protests. As we walked to our cars, I felt exhausted by the weird energy that had dominated the evening. "That was nice," I said to Matt as we drove home, though we both knew it wasn't true. "Mm-hmm." He was staring straight ahead at the road. Very illuminating. When we got home, Matt disappeared into his office again. I tried to follow him, but he closed the door firmly behind him. Through the thin wood, I could hear him on the phone, speaking in low, serious tones. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "Saw you guys at Bistro 42 tonight. Everything okay?" Matt looked miserable. Then another from Linda. "Matthew called. He sounds upset. What's going on, Zephyra?" And finally one from my mother. "You're working too hard, honey. Matt just needs to learn to appreciate what he has." But it was the next morning that everything changed. I woke up to find Matt already dressed and drinking coffee in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept at all. "I'm meeting with a lawyer today," he said without preamble. "Just in case." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "A lawyer? For what?" "You know for what." His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking slightly as he set down his coffee mug. "Matt, you're being ridiculous. What could you possibly need a lawyer for?" He didn't answer, just grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "I'll pick up Ivy from school today. Don't wait up tonight." After he left, I felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. A lawyer? Over what? Some imagined slight, some paranoid fantasy he'd constructed. I called Carter immediately. "Did you hear what Matt said to me this morning?" I asked when he picked up. "Zeph, I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what? We haven't done anything." "I told him." Carter's voice was barely above a whisper. "Last night, after dinner, I told him everything." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the kitchen floor. When I picked it up, Carter was still talking, but his words sounded like they were coming from underwater. "Couldn't keep lying to him. He's my best friend, and I'm sorry, Zeph, but I couldn't." I hung up and immediately checked my text messages. There it was, sent to my phone at 2:17 a.m. "I'm sorry, Matt. I should have told you sooner. What happened between Zeph and me was wrong, and I can't keep pretending it didn't happen. You deserve to know the truth." But the message wasn't from Carter's number. It was from my own phone, sent to Matt while I was sleeping. Carter had used my phone to confess, making it look like I had told Matt myself. I stared at the message thread in disbelief, scrolling up to see Matt's response. "Thank you for finally being honest. We'll talk soon." My hands were shaking as I called Carter back, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times with the same result. Finally, I sent a text. "We need to talk now." "What did you tell him exactly?" The response came an hour later. I told him the truth, about that night at my apartment, about everything. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't live with the lie anymore." That night, he was talking about 3 months ago, when Matt was out of town for a work conference, and I'd gone to Carter's place after a particularly stressful day at the office. We'd had too much wine, and one thing led to another. It was meaningless, just a physical release after weeks of feeling disconnected from Matt. We'd agreed it was a mistake and never talked about it again. Except now, Carter had decided to develop a conscience. I drove straight to his apartment, but his car wasn't in the parking lot. I called his office and was told he'd taken a personal day. He was avoiding me, leaving me to deal with the fallout alone. When I got home, Ivy was sitting at the kitchen table with her homework spread out in front of her, but she wasn't working. She was just staring at the papers with a confused, worried expression that broke my heart. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound normal. "How was school?" "Daddy picked me up early," she said quietly. He seemed sad. "Daddy's just stressed about work. You know how grown-ups get sometimes." "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Why would you ask that?" "Because Tommy's parents got divorced, and first his daddy was sad all the time, and then his mommy moved to a different house." Her eyes were wide and frightened. "I don't want you to move to a different house." "Nobody's moving anywhere," I said firmly, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "Daddy and I are just working through some things." But even as I said it, I was mentally calculating damage control strategies. Matt had evidence now, Carter's confession, probably phone records, maybe other things I hadn't thought of. I needed to get ahead of this before it spiraled completely out of control. I sent Carter another text. "You need to fix this. Tell him you were lying or confused or something. I have a daughter to think about." His response was immediate. "I can't lie anymore, Zeph. I'm sorry." "You're sorry? You're sorry? You just destroyed my family because you couldn't handle a little guilt?" It was wrong. What we did was wrong, and keeping it secret was making it worse. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Carter's sudden attack of morality was going to cost me everything. My marriage, my home, possibly even my relationship with Ivy. And for what? One night that meant nothing to either of us. Julia showed up at my door that evening, her face grim and determined. Matt's sister had never particularly liked me, and I could tell she was relishing this opportunity to confront me directly. "Everyone knows," she said without preamble. "Carter told Matt, Matt told Mom, and now the whole family is talking about it." "It's not what you think," I started, but she cut me off. "It's exactly what I think. You cheated on my brother with his best friend, and then you had the nerve to joke about it at dinner last night." "I wasn't joking about that. I was just trying to make conversation. By talking about how entertaining Carter is, how good he is at keeping secrets. While you were sitting right there next to Matt." Julia's voice was rising. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for him?" I felt cornered, attacked from all sides by people who didn't understand the full situation. "Look, what happened with Carter was a mistake. One time, months ago, when I was feeling neglected and lonely. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to Matt. Matt doesn't have to know. Carter could have just kept his mouth shut, and no one would have been hurt." Julia stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You really don't get it, do you? It's not about whether Matt knows. It's about what you did." After she left, I called my mother for support. Ruth listened to my version of events, how Matt had been distant and cold, how Carter had been a sympathetic friend, how one moment of weakness had been blown completely out of proportion. "Men can be so unforgiving," she said sympathetically. "Your father went through a jealous phase too. Matt will come around once he realizes he's being unreasonable." "But what if he doesn't? He mentioned a lawyer, Mum. What if he actually tries to divorce me?" "Then you get your own lawyer. You have rights too, Zephyra. You have a daughter and a home and a life you've built. One mistake doesn't erase all of that." Her words were comforting, but they didn't address the growing knot of fear in my stomach. Matt wasn't the type to make empty threats. If he said he was seeing a lawyer, he was serious about it. That night, I tried calling him directly. He answered on the fourth ring. "Matt, we need to talk about this rationally." "I think we're past rational conversations, F. It was one night, one stupid, meaningless night when I was feeling ignored and unappreciated. It didn't mean anything to me or to Carter. But it happened. Yes, it happened, but it's over. It's been over for months. Can't we just move past this?" There was a long silence. Then, "I don't think we can." "What about Ivy? Are you really going to destroy her family over one mistake?" "I'm not the one who destroyed anything." His voice was quiet but firm. "I'll be staying at a hotel for the next few weeks while I figure things out. My lawyer will be in touch." The line went dead. I sat in our empty house, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 3 days ago, my biggest problem was Matt being moody. Now I was facing divorce, custody battles, and the complete destruction of everything I'd worked to build. And it was all because Carter couldn't live with a secret that was better left buried. The email from Matt's lawyer arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday with the subject line, "Initial divorce filing and custody request." I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it, as if delaying would somehow make it less real. The language was cold and clinical. Irreconcilable differences. Breakdown of the marriage relationship. Primary physical custody of minor child. But buried in the legal terminology were details that made my blood run cold. Matt wasn't just asking for divorce. He was asking for everything. Primary custody of Ivy, the house, most of our shared assets, and he had evidence to support his requests. Documented proof of my affair, records of my deceptive behavior, and character witnesses who would testify to his fitness as a parent versus mine. I called the lawyer's office immediately, demanding to speak with someone about this misunderstanding. The receptionist was polite but firm. "Mr. Vane's attorney will be happy to communicate with your legal representation." "I don't have legal representation yet." "Then I'd suggest you obtain some quickly. The initial hearing is scheduled for next month." Next month, 4 weeks to find a lawyer, build a defense, and somehow salvage my relationship with my daughter. The timeline felt impossibly short for something that would determine the rest of my life. I drove to Carter's apartment building, and waited in the parking lot until I saw his car pull in. He tried to avoid me, walking quickly toward the entrance, but I intercepted him. "You have to help me fix this," I said, grabbing his arm. "Tell them you lied, or that you were drunk when you confessed, or something. Anything." "I can't do that, Zeph." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I already gave Matt a written statement. It's too late." "A written statement? What kind of written statement?" "Everything. Dates, times, what happened. My lawyer said it was better to be completely honest up front." "Your lawyer? You have a lawyer now too?" "Matt's lawyer suggested I get one, to protect myself in case—" He trailed off, but I understood. In case I tried to drag him down with me. "Carter, please. I'm going to lose everything. My daughter, my home, my whole life. Is one night of sex really worth destroying all of that?" He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that made my stomach drop. "It wasn't just one night, Zeph. And you know it." "What are you talking about? Of course it was just one night." The texts, the phone calls, the emotional affair that went on for months before anything physical happened. His voice was getting stronger, more confident. "I told Matt everything. About how you complained about him constantly, how you said you wished you'd married someone more exciting, how you made me feel like I was rescuing you from a boring marriage." I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Those were just... I was venting. That's what friends do. Friends don't send the kind of messages you were sending me, Zeph. Friends don't meet for drinks 3 times a week and spend the whole time talking about how unsatisfied they are at home. You're twisting everything. You were a willing participant in all of those conversations. I know I was. That's why I confessed. That's why I'm taking responsibility for my part in this. He started walking toward his building again. "But I'm not going to lie for you anymore." I stood in the parking lot, watching him disappear into the lobby, and felt the last of my allies slip away. Back home, I found Matt loading boxes into his truck. He was taking his books, his clothes, personal items that made it clear this separation wasn't temporary. "The movers will come for the furniture next week," he said without looking at me. "I'm taking the guest bedroom set and my office furniture. Everything else stays with the house for now." "Matt, please, can't we try counseling or something? For Ivy's sake." "I've already filed, Zeph. The papers will be served tomorrow." "But what about our daughter? What about the family we built together? Are you really going to throw all of that away?" He stopped loading boxes and turned to face me. "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. It was one mistake, one stupid, meaningless mistake." "It wasn't one mistake." His voice was calm, but I could see the anger underneath. "It was months of lies, months of you complaining about me to my best friend, making me look like a fool, planning secret meetings, sending inappropriate messages. The physical affair was just the culmination of everything else. I never planned anything. It just happened." "People don't just happen to have affairs, Zeph. They make choices. Lots of little choices that lead to bigger ones." He picked up another box. "You chose to prioritize your relationship with Carter over your relationship with me. You chose to share intimate details about our marriage with another man. You chose to meet him alone repeatedly. You chose to go to his apartment that night. None of that just happened." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but his calm recitation of facts was more devastating than shouting would have been. Because he wasn't wrong about the timeline, even if he was wrong about my intentions. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now you find a lawyer, and we work out custody arrangements and asset division. I want this to be as easy as possible for Ivy." "And us? Is there any chance for us?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something that might have been sadness cross his face. "I don't think so, Zeph. I don't think I can ever trust you again." That night, after Matt had taken the last of his boxes and Ivy was asleep, I sat in our living room and tried to figure out how I'd gotten here. 6 months ago, I'd been a married woman with a stable home and a secure future. Now I was facing single motherhood, potential financial ruin, and the loss of everything I'd taken for granted. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. Heard about the divorce filing. I'm sorry, Zeph. If you need anything. Then another from Julia. Matt told me about the custody arrangement. For what it's worth, I think you should get to see Ivy regularly. She needs her mother. Even Matt's family was being more generous than I deserved, which somehow made everything worse. I wasn't the victim here, no matter how much I wanted to frame it that way. I was the person who had made choices that led to this moment. But understanding that didn't make it hurt any less. The family courthouse smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat. I sat at a table with my hastily hired lawyer, watching Matt and his legal team organize what looked like enough documentation to fill a small library. 3 months of legal proceedings had led to this moment, and I could already tell how it was going to end. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, was competent but not optimistic. They have a strong case, she'd told me during our preparation meeting. The documented affair, the financial record showing gifts and expenses related to your relationship with Mr. Ellison, the character witnesses, the custody evaluator's report. It's going to be an uphill battle. The custody evaluator's report had been particularly damaging. After interviewing both Matt and me, spending time with Ivy, and reviewing the evidence, Dr. Patricia Chen had recommended that primary physical custody go to Matt, with me receiving supervised visitation initially, expanding to alternate weekends after 6 months of demonstrated stability. The child has expressed confusion and distress about the family situation, Dr. Chen had written. She appears to have a strong bond with both parents, but shows signs of anxiety when discussing the prospect of moving between 2 homes. The father's living situation appears more stable at this time, and the child has expressed comfort with maintaining her current school and activity schedule. What the report didn't say directly, but implied clearly, was that Ivy was afraid of me. Not physically afraid, but afraid of the chaos I represented. During the evaluation, when Dr. Chen asked Ivy what she wanted, my 7-year-old daughter had said, "I want Mommy and Daddy to stop being sad, but if they can't, I want to stay in my same room and go to my same school." She wanted stability, and I represented the opposite of that. Matt's lawyer, David Richardson, was methodical in his presentation. He laid out the timeline of my affair with Carter, complete with phone records, text message screenshots, and bank statements showing dinners and gifts. He presented testimony from Julia, who had witnessed my inappropriate behavior at family gatherings. He had statements from my co-workers who had observed my relationship with Carter. Most devastatingly, he had Carter's complete written confession, detailing not just the physical affair, but months of emotional infidelity that preceded it. When it was my turn to present my case, I found myself falling back on the same arguments that had failed me for months. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Matt was being unreasonably harsh. Everyone deserved a second chance. "Your Honor," I said when given the opportunity to speak on my own behalf, "I made a terrible error in judgment, but I'm still Ivy's mother. I love her more than anything, and I've learned from my mistakes. My husband is trying to punish me by taking away the most important thing in my life." Judge Patricia Hawkins looked at me with the expression of someone who had heard similar pleas countless times before. "Mrs. Vane, this court's primary concern is the best interests of the child, not the punishment or reward of either parent. The evidence suggests that your daughter's stability and well-being would be better served by the custody arrangement requested by your husband. But it was just one night, one stupid mistake that I've regretted every day since it happened." "Mrs. Vane," the judge said firmly, "the evidence presented shows a pattern of deceptive behavior over several months, not a single isolated incident. More importantly, your daughter has expressed a clear preference for maintaining her current living situation with her father." The words hit me like a physical blow. Ivy had chosen Matt over me. My own daughter, when asked who she wanted to live with, had chosen her father. "However," Judge Hawkins continued, The court recognizes the importance of maintaining the mother-child relationship. You will have supervised visitation for the first 6 months, transitioning to alternate weekend custody if you demonstrate stability and complete the required counseling programs. Supervised visitation. Like I was a danger to my own child. The asset division was equally devastating. Matt got the house, our home, where I'd planned to raise Ivy, where all her memories were rooted. I got a small settlement, enough to rent an apartment and start over, but not enough to maintain anything close to the life I'd been living. The court finds that Mr. Vane's financial stability and employment history make him better positioned to maintain the family home for the benefit of the minor child, the judge explained. Mrs. Vane will receive her portion of the marital assets, but the house will remain with the primary custodial parent. As the gavel came down, finalizing the divorce that dissolved 8 years of marriage, I looked across the courtroom at Matt. He wasn't triumphant or vindictive. He just looked tired and sad, like someone who had won a war he never wanted to fight. Outside the courthouse, I found myself alone. My mother had flown back home the week before, unable to extend her stay any longer. Owen had texted his support, but was dealing with his own family crisis. Even my lawyer seemed eager to wrap up our business relationship and move on to her next case. Matt approached me as I stood on the courthouse steps, unsure where to go next. The first supervised visit is scheduled for Saturday afternoon, he said quietly. 2 hours at the community center. Ivy's excited to see you. Is she okay with all of this? She's resilient. Kids adapt better than adults sometimes. He paused, looking like he wanted to say something else. For what it's worth, Zeph, I never wanted it to end this way. Then why did it have to? Because you made choices that made it impossible for me to trust you, and Ivy needs parents she can trust. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in front of the building where my old life had been officially declared dead. That evening, I sat in my new studio apartment, a cramped space that smelled like the previous tenant's cigarettes, and tried to figure out what came next. I had a part-time job at a different company since my old workplace had become too uncomfortable after the affair became public knowledge. I had supervised visits with my daughter twice a week. I had a court-mandated therapist who was helping me process my choices and their consequences. What I didn't have was the life I'd taken for granted 6 months earlier. The marriage, the home, the daily relationship with my daughter, the social network that had been built around being Matt's wife and Ivy's mother. All of that was gone, replaced by this smaller, lonelier existence. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about the divorce. I'm sorry things worked out this way. Carter. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Carter had moved to a different city shortly after giving his testimony, taking a new job and leaving behind the wreckage of our choices. He got to start over somewhere fresh, while I had to rebuild my life in the same town where everyone knew what I'd done. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd thought I was making a joke when I told Matt about the affair, trying to shock him into paying attention to me. Instead, I'd revealed a truth that destroyed everything I actually cared about. The joke was on me, and the punchline was the rest of my life. As I prepared for bed in my tiny apartment, I could hear my upstairs neighbor's television through the thin walls, a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen from the suburban quiet I used to complain about. Tomorrow, I would wake up alone, go to a job that barely paid my bills, and count the hours until my next supervised visit with my daughter. I'd gotten exactly what I'd asked for when I joked about trading Matt in for someone more exciting. The problem was, I'd never really wanted it at all. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.